Welcome to the Peerless YouTube channel. I am Caitie North, and this is the 4th tutorial in our hair series. The fiery spiral red, copperish kind of color. It is one of my favorites. I've loved having it on myself. My mom has red hair. Yeah, it's just so pretty. So this one we will be using the masking fluid again, and it's kind of more on a focus on getting like a larger spiral pattern and how you can get those individual curls instead of kind of like that overall kind of fullness of curl. So being able to see individual sections and how to get those shadows to make those ones pop out. So I think it's a good one. It's my favorite. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. For your supplies, you'll be needing Peerless Watercolors, the hair pack, watercolor brush and paper, masking fluid, extra small paintbrush, a pencil, scissors, and a light box. Okay, so as we're getting started and we're making our watercolor palette and we're transferring our image into our watercolor journal, I kind of want to just do a little overview of the first three classes and the straight and smooth and how we did those layering and kind of did the wash of the darkest color or the lightest color and then started layering over once it's completely dried to get those individual hairs to pop out. And then starting with the masking fluid in the second video and how to get those lightest pieces and the blondes and how to mix those colors. And then in the chestnut spiral curl video, how to get that depth and dark and really good kind of pieces in the darkest areas and then those lighters on the end. So with this red one, looking at our reference photo, we want to do pretty much all of those things. So we are going to use the masking fluid, and I focused the masking fluid on the brightest and most vibrant tendrils of the red hair that are furthest away and closest to you. So furthest away from her, closest to you. And all of the hair, that red, rich, dark hair that's in the shadows is what we're actually going to do first. So in my reference photo and my sketch that I'm doing onto my page, I'm leaving almost like what a whole tendril of curl would be like. And I'm making it kind of wavy because then once I start doing the details and the kind of individual hairs of, you know, how we get those details, I want it to actually do those details in a spiral pattern. So right now, what we're going to be doing is just the masking fluid on those brightest areas, and don't worry about the detail because that's going to be in the later washes. But now we're trying to build out those darkest reds. So it might even take a few times and a couple washes and letting one completely dry and then going back again and doing another wash of red to get the darkest areas. So just first, we're going to be putting down our masking fluid. And it might look a little funny just because it's wavy and you don't really see the actual like curl pattern anymore, like the reference photo that I drew. But one of the reasons I do that is because when you put the masking fluid down over pencil, sometimes the pencil kind of smears it and it doesn't look as clean. So that was kind of my easy fix, is that I've just wanted to make sure that I had enough, you know, space to do the tendrils, but then I don't have any like weird mushy pencil lines. And then one of my favorite details about the little tiny red hair that goes over her cheek and her cheekbone is that you see it go over into the darkest shadow areas. And so I kind of just drew a line on the cheekbone where that hair would be, and then as soon as it hits the jawbone, I make sure to use the masking fluid just as skinny as I can get it off that single hair in the darker area. You can see when I shine it, it's really tiny. And then when it's done, you can see where it pops out. But okay, and now we are going to be doing our first layer of our red gold hair from the hair pack, and just starting to get those red colors, like kind of that in between color, and then especially on the flyaways and then on the ends of the hair. And then we will be working on making it darker. So once I've got on all the ends and the flyaways and the outer edges done, and I'm going to start building the darker shadows is my second wash, and it can be a little bit wet. You're not gonna get too much detail this first time anyway. And doing the wet on wet technique using the auburn hair and the mahogany. I think the mahogany is actually from the regular pack, but I wrote mahogany hair there just because, you know, it works too. But yeah, so wet on wet technique, building out those shadows around the face, around that kind of end where those curls, like kind of where her collarbone is, and then just building more and more things. So you don't have to worry about this being too red either, because like a lot of times when red hair is in shadow, it looks like it's a darker brown. So instead of doing it like a bright red, like I would do more of a brown red or a mahogany red or an auburn red, because that's gonna make it look more realistic, like an actual redhead. Of course, you can do like, you know, Ariel red and in the shadows too, but this is, I feel, a little bit more natural looking, and you could totally do the red gold hair as the background and then do like flaxen hair as the front pieces, and that would be like more of like a fiery red also. But anyway, just little thoughts. So it's a little harder to see on these paintings just because they're so small, proportion-wise. I wanted to keep them kind of, you know, within 15 minutes or so. But if you were doing a larger painting, you could definitely have a cohesive kind of swooping hairstyle, and there'd be a front and a back, and you see the individual hairs. But a lot of times if you don't use the masking fluid, you're going to be sitting there meticulously making sure that those hairs that make up the back section of the hair, point A to point B, kind of is in the perfect line, but you still see the front section first. The easiest way to do that is that I found is the masking fluid. So the masking fluid lets you do this first wash, which is like your base color, your second wash, which is your sectionings, and the third wash, which is the individual details and, like, you know, detailed hair, like actual hairs. And you see when I take off the masking fluid of this one, you can get all of those little detailed hairs, which, you know, are in the shadows and there, but you have 3 layers of hair on those deep shadows. If you were trying to do those deep of colors while not touching the lighter parts of the hair, you're not going to get as clean and smooth lines for those tendrils that are going to be closest to you and the brightest. They're just going to be a little bit smaller. Like if your painting was much bigger, you could definitely do it. But I feel like this is like the easiest kind of like, oh yeah, look, all of these are lighter pieces. These ones are the ones hitting by sunshine and reflecting the light, and then all of your darker pieces. So even simple like this with that first wash of the flaxen hair and the red hair mixed together, it looks pretty cool, and it looks like hair even if you're just looking at it from farther away. So yep, that's all we're doing, putting that first wash there. We are doing the details next, so you want to make sure this layer completely dries before you do your next detail layer. Alright, so while my first layer is drying, I'm going to be mixing my first, like all my secondary tones for the details of my spirals. And I will be using that detailed, tiny detail brush. And the reason I'm using that one instead of the reservoir brush, so obviously first you could get way more tiny details, but secondly, when you start from point A to point B for the brush stroke with the water reservoir brush, the end kind of tends to be more translucent. And when I'm doing hair and individual hairs, I want the color that I put down to be very, you know, very like the same and uniform. And I want to know exactly when I'm picking up that color, like where it's going to go. Sometimes when you're using the water reservoir brush, like depending on how much you push it, then more water comes out and it's more diluted, and then you have to mix again. So that kind of saves the hassle. What we're doing now is just kind of putting in where the spirals are in the hair, and I will add a little picture of a spiral just so you kind of see too, where like the front facing you and then the back behind the spiral. That will eventually, we will put more shadow and darker pieces and then do the little detail swoops. But right now, just worry about putting in where those spirals are twisting. All right, so if you want to take a look, I kind of drew it out in pencil to make it a little bit easier to understand. So when we are just starting, we just have those wavy sections, and now we are going to be trying to make those flat wavy sections look like they are a spiral. And so kind of doing those little S shapes to create the front of the spiral, which will be closest to you, and then the back spiral, which will be in shadow. So that is the second layer. And then the third layer is, I usually just make the back part of the spiral a darker wash, don't worry about the details, and then start putting the very light details on the front of the spirals with the little tiny detail like individual hairs. And main goal is just, you want it to make it look round, so you want it to have the front and the back and any kind of like more of a S shape or at the edges, just to give it that roundness will help. So that's just kind of what is going to be going on for the last few sections. I will keep the video on me until it is completed. But yeah, that's just, you know, that's how I've been working, and just going back through with all of my, and you can see too, I'm picking up paint from each one of my brushes or my piles of paint too, just because I know where I'm going to work next. But it's really nice having those already all available, so you don't have to mix them each time. Definitely still remembering, if you're doing details, just like all of the other ones, if you want it to be individual hairs and more detailed, you want to let the like layers between each paint dry, and so you can get that, you know, crisper lines and none of that wet, like none of your, you know, sectioning is blending together. But yeah, that is my my hair red fiery spiral tendril tutorial. So I hope you enjoy it. And of course, my favorite little flyaways, and especially with red hair, because it's just known for its unruly nature, and those beautiful little flyaways I think are so pretty. Just kind of adding those too. Those always make it look a little bit more natural, a little bit in the front and the sides and wherever you'd like. And one of my other favorite tips is using the complementary tone for shadows. So for this purple, the complementary tone for the orange is purple. And so yeah, just kind of doing my detailed lines with the purple with all of the places that I want to be the darkest and in shadow details. And that's it. I love hair and hairstyles, and let's do more of these because they were a lot of fun. Yeah, we could just do like a whole year of hair, which that would probably be too much for most people, but you know, myself, I would be very happy with it. But anyway, yeah, make sure you like and subscribe and share with your friends, and yeah, I will see you next time.